Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Quell canceling, or the closest thing we have now that it has been largely removed from the game. Specifically, Quell canceling concerning specific tools at Psyker's disposal, like Assail shards, which interestingly enough can still be Quell cancelled. Scryer's Gaze with Warp and Bound can be used to great effect with this particular build, as well as Empowered Psionics, which is just going to make Assail a lot better. So to start off, you probably know what a sail looks like. You throw out a shard, it does some damage, eventually it regenerates. Empowered Psionics gives you basically infinite Assail shards as long as you're killing elites. And if you keep mashing the button, the M1 button, you will throw out, Assail shards at a particular rate of fire. However, this rate of fire can be adjusted through quelling in between each shard. Now, I haven't calculated frame for frame how much faster this is, but I think it's about 35-40% faster than just throwing the shards by mousing the M1 button. This is an alternative way of trying to quell cancel or do something like quell canceling. It's kind of like QQ canceling, or basically weapon swap canceling, something very popular in games like Vermintide. Some people think it's faster. I don't really agree. I think that the actual quell canceling mechanism yields more reliable results and faster throws, but your mileage may vary. The quell canceling, especially if you have your quell or reload button somewhere that's easily accessible while you're moving around, is certainly much easier, I think, than having to hit QQ over and over and over between every single throw. Something to note about quell canceling, you can see that my peril is constantly going up. And that's because I'm using Scryer's Gaze, and if you try to do the quell canceling technique like this, when you have zero peril, it actually won't work. And the reason is because you cannot enter the quell animation with most weapons when you have zero peril. So if you're going to quell cancel, you need to make sure that you are, you actually have some peril built up to do it. So right now, I'm showing you a little bit about Electrokinetic staff canceling, which is actually an animation cancel. You do it by swapping your weapons, then re-equipping the staff. This is the most efficient way to use the charged attack. You can truncate this by putting the weapon away. So as opposed to going tick 1, tick 2, tick 3, tick 4, tick 5, the fifth tick being the big damage tick, you can compress them all into a single tick by swapping the weapon. Anytime you want to use the charged attack on the surge staff, you definitely should, do that. You need to practice putting the weapon away and redrawing it again. I'm just showing some more attempts to quell cancel, kind of getting my bearings for both of these cancel techniques. This entire build that I'm running is based off of canceling. Now, this mouse 1 spam with the surge staff is probably the most common way that people use it for optimal single target DPS. And this was the big villain of the game when you had a lot of Psykers walking around quell canceling. Because basically what you could do is you could, hit the quell button, and well, you can kind of see what I'm doing on my screen right now. You could truncate the casting animation, get off like 4 or 5 bolts per second minimum. Well, the interesting thing is that there's kind of a way you can still do this, get off a lot of M1 staff attacks in a very short period of time. However, it only works, from what I've seen, with this weapon, the Inferno staff. Yeah, that's right, the Inferno staff, the weapon that is probably the strongest weapon in the game, still has a lot of janky exploits to make it even stronger. So, as opposed to quelling in between casts, or trying to do what I'm doing right here, like putting the weapon away and drawing it back out, you can actually use the mouse 1 attack and then cancel the casting animation with Sprint. That's right. You tap the Sprint key, and as you can see, you can get off like 5 or 6 M1 casts, all of which do full damage and stack dots very rapidly. This exploit was actually available back when people used to quell cancel with macros or freehand several months ago. And this particular method of quell canceling the Inferno staff's M1 attack is actually faster from what I've seen than any macro I was able to create through testing and experimentation for quell canceling. There's only one weakness of this particular style. It does a lot of damage, it staggers a lot of enemies, it builds a lot of dots. But the big problem is, as you can see, I have to sprint, which means I have to move forward. And that is not always going to be strategically viable. So, this is the standard mouse 1 casting time, and here is the sprint canceling form of it. I think this is a really good technique to have in your arsenal if you're going to be doing a lot of flame staff use or inferno staff use, just because it keeps your damage very high as if you're using charged inferno staff attacks, while also stagger locking a lot of enemies. This will actually work up the havoc if you're not fighting something like rotten armor or you know, red or orange auric enemies that are largely immune to stagger. This can stagger ragers, it can stagger groups of shotgunners, and so on and so forth. Good luck.